Hey there, welcome back to Speaking of the Village podcast. Thanks for joining us. I am your host, Dawn Thompson, with my amazing co host, Nicole Harlot. And today it's just you and me, kid.
Yeah, it is.
Just you and me, kid. And I wanted to talk about a birth that I just had. So today's going to be a birth story. It was my first birth in quite some time. Obviously, I've attended several hundred births at this point in 20 years, but when I moved to more advocacy stuff and being the founder of Improving Birth and then now the founder of Birthify, I really left in-person birth and for a couple of reasons. First of all, just because it was a lot. And, when you're running a company, it's a little more challenging to just be on call. But not only that, is being on call is tough, right? It's tough being on call and knowing that somebody could call you and you never know when. And you're missing, major things with your family and friends and all those sorts of things.
Yeah.
But then also the other part of it was that it also became challenging physically, right? It is physically exhausting to be a birth doula. Now, some births are quick and easy, and then you're like, yes, but then you've got the 24 to 48 hour ones that you're just like, I'm gonna die. But more than that, I like to tell the story about the first time I ever went to a home birth and how it was so impactful. And I was so blown away about how different it was than what hospital birth was like
Yeah.
that I cried all the way home because I thought, how do I see that? And then how do I go back
Right.
into the hospital when I know what it can be like?
Yeah, and I can just say I've never professionally felt that way, but personally, once I left the hospital birthing my children, people are like, "Oh, you're so brave to do a home birth." And I'm like, "No, y'all brave going back into that hospital."
It's true. And I want to preface this with the fact that when I got into birth work, I'm not your crunchy granola. Like a lot of people see doulas as being sort of like hippie or, that sort of thing. And I could not have been further from that. I was very much, I'm very much a type A. I was definitely Western medicine. I did not understand why anyone would want to have a drug-free birth. Like I was just like, screw that. I was like, give me the epidural as soon as I get there, so um I just want to preface that because I think it's important that, it was the exposure to birth in all the different ways that I saw it over the years that changed my mind and ultimately led to me having a home birth myself. Listen, I don't think it's practical that we move birth back into home birth. I know there's a lot of birth professionals that might be listening to this episode and be upset with me for saying that. Do I think that it would be amazing? I do. Do I think there's far more people that should be having home birth? 1,000,000%. But I don't think it's practical or logical to say we should just move birth back into the home. I think that's just unrealistic.
I think it's really important to normalize both, right? Like that's
Yes.
where I want to go. It's like it's totally the choice of the woman where she feels most safe
Yes.
because everyone's going to be different. And, again, we talk about this on so many episodes. Like if you're listening and this is the first time you're joining us, we definitely talk about this more. And if you're a repeat listener, thank you for still being here. And you know that we mention this all the time. It's such an individualized industry. Like
Yeah.
every single woman, every single pregnancy is so individualized.
Well, yeah, it should be
Well,
individualized.
okay, it should be
It
individualized.
should
What,
be. The
yeah,
birth experience is an individualized thing, but the hospital system has created it to be a one size fits all, which is
right,
why there's a problem. And
right.
so I preface that in saying I don't think home birth is realistic for everyone. I do, however, believe that birth in hospital could and should be better than it is. And this was my first birth in about 2 years. And I was rapidly reminded of how bad hospital birth is. It's it's a lot of little things. It's a lot of little things. And I guess I'll just share the story because that's where I want to go. And then I want to talk about there's a hospital birth center. Well, it's a hospital, just it's a hospital. They call it a birth center, but you know how that is. It's not a freestanding
Not a
birth
freestanding.
center. It's the birth center in the hospital. And I want to talk about their statistics after, as we get down towards the end, because their statistics are incredible and it proves that it's possible. And that for me is my whole mission. It's like, okay, home birth is not practical for everyone, but there are ways that we can improve birth in the hospital setting. And this last birth was just exactly why. Like it was just the best demonstration of like, holy shit balls, this was so awful. It's so awful. And anyways, so obviously I'm not going to share too much detail about the birth because it's it's a client and whatever. So first time parents, I should say, and they her goal is to go as long as she can without an epidural. She's not opposed to an epidural. She wants to see if she can do it. She's a Division 1 athlete, so she's just like, I wanna try. And I'm like, I'm your girl. Let's do it. Like we can do that. Um, her labor just starts. Like there's no build up to it. There's no like slow progress. She went all night and woke up a couple of times in the middle of the night feeling the cramping sensation, but like was fine. But in the morning, she gets out of bed and now her contractions are 2 minutes apart. Like there's no 2 minutes apart, 3 minutes max. And they're lasting in the beginning, 30 seconds, pretty typical, right? But quickly, but she's having them 2 to 3 minutes apart, 2 to 3 minutes apart. For hours and hours and hours and hours. And I go over there in the morning just to assess. Everything's great. It's still pretty early, I can tell. I'm going to go home, let you guys do your thing for a while. So they do that. And now she's like, okay, several hours later, and she's like, I feel like I could really use your help. It's getting hard. And I'm like, okay, great. So I go over there. Again, still 2 minutes. It's probably been 6 hours, 7 hours already. 2 minutes apart, every 2 minutes without fail.
At that point, you
And
can't rest. You can't like do anything because you're
no,
yeah.
no. And now they're definitely like a full minute long. And they have been a full minute long for now 2 or 3 hours. And I'm with her. She's now starting to vocalize quite a bit. She's getting more and more distracted. She can't chat with me. All the typical signs that a doula is looking for that labor is progressing. And eventually, my goal is always to get my clients in to the hospital like around 5, 6, 7 centimeters. Like I want to be active labor, especially if they're working hard to, trying to do it without any medication. Her labor is confusing me a little bit, you know, because I'm like, she's either having a fast birth or she's got something going on, like bad positioning for the baby or cervical scar tissue, because you don't just go into labor and go 2 minutes apart. Like there's something going on. So I'm trying all these things but we're getting pretty intense and I'm like, okay, maybe we should go to the hospital because she's either in a funky position or she's like gonna have a baby. Like, like it was very confusing. But usually I know if it's confusing, there's something. But I just needed to just get a dial in because as a doula, you don't do vaginal exams, right? So um anyways, so we go to the hospital, they check her, she's 90% effaced and 1 centimeter dilated. And I'm like, that makes no sense. You do not contract every 2 minutes for 12 hours at this point.
Right.
And they're lasting a full minute and only be 1 centimeter dilated. That just does not make sense.
No.
Anyways, but so her husband has gone up because this hospital, and this is again one of those places that drives me crazy. This hospital has a triage. So the triage rooms are literally like this big. They're very small. So they only allow one person to go in. And of course, I'm gonna have her husband go. Like,
Of course,
so
but that's usually not the most prepared person to be there either.
no, it's not. And of course they're like doing all this stuff and she's beside herself because she's working so hard and she's been working so hard for so long. Now, it's great that she's 90% effaced, but that's pretty unusual too, to be 90% effaced and only 1 centimeter. Like the dilation, the effacement has to happen before dilation, but usually it's a little more even. So I'm like, clearly there's something going on. But so her husband comes down and swaps with me, and I go up and I'm trying to talk to the nurse and asking her, and I'm like, that's kind of unusual. Like, she's been contracting every 2 minutes for da da da. And this nurse is just already got a chip on her shoulder. Like, you could just tell she's just like, who are you? Kind of like this side, sort of like
Like
she's
the opposite of collaborative care.
a million times. She's sussing me out. She's da da da. And I go, that's really strange that she's got. And I said, did you notice any scar tissue on her cervix? Because that can be a cause. She goes, no, I mean, why would you think that? And I go, because she's been contracting for 2 minutes apart since the beginning of her labor, and she's been going for this many hours. And she goes, this is textbook. This is textbook labor. And I'm like, well,
No.
this is absolutely not textbook labor. But she's just like, it's fine. Yeah, just go home. You're doing fine. Like, you just need to relax. You need to rest. Like, and she's just being like super aggressive and not like uh, the client is working so hard. She's moaning through every single contraction. She can't barely sit still. She's lying on this bed. She doesn't want to be laying down. Like, she's really struggling. And this nurse is like, "Oh, this is textbook. This is textbook." And I'm like, and I go, "I've been doing this for 23 years. This is not textbook." She goes, "Oh, I've been doing it for 38."
Oh, jeez.
And I was like, I'm I'm not going to get anywhere with this person. This is
Right.
not a collaborative relationship at all. And I'm trying to,
Right.
but it's just,
Hold on 1 second, because as we're going through this, I want to talk, because if we have like first time, pregnant parents listening, that's the difference that we don't actually think about who is in that room with you, right? At a home birth or a setting where you're choosing your team and who's going to be in that room is so different from when this nurse is on shift and this is the time that's
a
coming,
million
right?
times.
I
Yeah.
don't think anyone who's a first time pregnant person thinks about that,
No.
right? Like it's not in the books, it's not anywhere for you to be like, oh yeah, it's all dependent on how their day's going and who's on shift and did they, work 24-hour shift yesterday
Yeah.
and
Or are
all
they
of
just a kind person? Are
that.
they
Right.
are they empathetic? Are they warm? Are they, like
Do they
this lady?
understand the importance of doulas and having that extra support? Like when you have a home birth, and again, even a birth center birth, like there's different people in the room. Like
Yeah.
the freestanding birth
It's a,
center.
I'd say it's a roulette, I want to say Russian roulette, but that's a terrible analogy, but it is roulette. You're just, you're
Yeah.
rolling the dice. You have no idea who's going to be in there. But so anyways, as you can imagine, my client was super discouraged. We go home and I say, listen, you are contracting like you're 5 or 6 centimeters. This doesn't make sense. This is not textbook. Please don't absorb that because that's not true. Anyways, so I leave them for a little while again because I'm like, I think you guys need to just be you. You need to get some food, take a nap if you can, which of course was like impossible. But I told her to get in water, which helped for a little while, actually. She was able to rest and she got into her bathtub. She's 6'1" and she got into a regular bathtub, but it was all she had.
Right.
But
You do
anyway,
what you gotta
so
do.
yeah. Anyway, so only about an hour, hour and a half, I think, goes by, and she's like, I need you. I'm really struggling. And now everything is increasing, and now we're really rocking and rolling. I mean, she's starting to also like kind of emotionally lose it. Like,
Mhm.
this is really hard.
It's really hard. Birth
It
is
is really
really
hard.
hard. Even the
Yeah, it's
beautiful,
really hard.
serene home births are hard. It's not easy at all.
Yes. So we go back to the hospital after several hours and we get there and they check her, but this time her water broke. So her water broke so that was it. That was when they called me over because she was in the water, had a really big contraction, her water broke, and she started throwing up, which is very common because it's such a huge hormone rush
Right.
when that happens. And she got sick and then she's just like, holy shit balls. Like,
It's
this
time.
is no
Let's
joke.
go.
So I
Yeah.
go over, we're working really good together, the three of us, her husband and me, and she's working really hard and doing great. It is clear that she is really, I mean, her contractions are lasting almost a full minute and a half. Like, we're really rocking and rolling. And this is like, she's on the verge of transition contractions. Like, I've done this a lot. Like, I know what this looks like. So we go in and they check her, and she's 3 centimeters. And I'm like, this makes no sense. This makes no sense. And she's like, I can't. I cannot do this. I need an epidural. So no problem. They check her in. Thankfully, this next nurse that we get the second time we come in is much nicer
Oh, good.
and much more cool and like just cool,
Yeah.
and much
Yeah.
more thoughtful and supportive and all those things. So we go up, but again, we're in triage. We go up they transfer us upstairs to check her in because now she's ruptured, so that's an automatic.
Right. Of course.
Anyways, and she's just like, how quickly can I get the epidural? And again, it's like they've got all these systems in place, right? And they got to do all these things, and they got to do, and there again, there's just like this edge, even to the new nurse. She's really sweet, fairly new, but there's still just this edge. Like, if you're a doula, it's like you're some sort of threat. And I work
Which is so the opposite of what it should be.
so the opposite. And like, I want to work with you. I want to, like, whatever. And I work at this other hospital that has doulas all the time because they have two docs there that are super natural minded. And so doulas are there all the time and they love doulas. And I have such great relationships with these nurses, and we all get along and we work together. And I mean, sometimes these nurses will come in and when they're not managing a bunch of people and they're like, is it okay if I stay in here so I can watch you? And like, they want to learn from me. And and then you go to this other hospital it's the largest hospital in the county. It delivers the most babies. It is literally, I have described it as cattle call. Like, they're just herding people through. It's it's a very, very different experience. And this goes to tell you these are two hospitals in the same community. Even the
That's
hospital,
the big.
the number one indicator of whether or not you'll have a C-section is the hospital door you walk into. It has nothing to do with you and your body or your baby or anything. It's about which hospital you walk into. And so this hospital also happens to have the highest C-section rate in the state. Anyways, it just was uncomfortable and it was so unfortunate and unnecessary. It's like they don't even know me, right? They don't know me. They don't know, and they didn't even try to get to know me. But here's the thing. So she gets the epidural. She's feeling much better and much happier. I'm not anti-epidural, by the way. She was I always say there's a difference between hard work and torture. And she was entering torture. Like, it was intense. I mean, to be in for 16 hours for 2 minutes apart for the last 16 hours, like, that's brutal, right? So anyways, so she gets the epidural, and I am suspecting, we've determined it's probably not cervical scar tissue. She just has no history for
Or
cervical
to
scar
be
tissue.
there, right? Okay.
And so I am thinking it's gotta be a position issue. So I get her into a position, it's called the flying cowgirl, and you get a peanut ball and you can look it up. And but our doctor comes in and I'm freaking blown away. This woman is contracting. She is working hard, and her doctor comes in. She seems cool. She has no interest in inducing. So I was like, okay, cool. Like this, like everything my client has been telling me about this doctor. I didn't know her. Everything she's telling me is great. Like all the things you want to hear. Like she's not going to induce me before 42 weeks. She's not, like all these things, right? And I'm like, okay, she's cool. She walks in. And she goes, okay, cool. Well, we got you on the epidural. We're checked you. You're 3 centimeters, but you're 90% effaced. You're super thin. You're almost completely effaced. She goes, but we're going to check you at 11:15. That's like in an hour and a half. Not even an hour. We're going to check you in an hour. It was like in an hour. So we're going to check you again in an hour. And if there's no change, we're going to put you on Pitocin. What? And by the way, she's also in the same breath saying, we're a little concerned about the baby's heart rate. The heart rate is really high. And da da da. Da. And I'm just thinking,
Because they've been
why?
working.
Why? But if one of the major side effects to Pitocin is fetal distress, and you're telling me that this baby might already be in distress, and you're going to put Pitocin into the game? Like, why? She is contracting every 2 minutes. But what she's saying is like, oh, well, maybe that these aren't as productive. And also, it's whatever it was. I don't know what time it was. It was probably close to midnight. And she gets off at 7 a.m.
Of course, she just wanted the baby on her watch.
Right. But we're going to put the baby at risk for fetal distress so that you can have your baby with me by 7.
And we've talked about that. I forget which episode it was, but how doctors only get paid if you have the baby on their shift. So
Yeah.
it makes sense that they push things that will make that happen.
Yeah.
Again,
And
for our
let's
listeners
be
who don't know all the
Let's be
things.
clear, that's not always true in every hospital, right? Different hospitals have different structures, but overall, that's true from an insurance standpoint.
Right.
Yeah. And so, anyways, I was really frustrated and I was just like, and I just looked at my client like, what? What? And she was like, no, but she just was like, whatever. But we got her into a position. They came and checked her. And here's the thing that I point out is that nurses are taught a very specific way. They are not taught about normal physiological birth or the fact that different things can impact the progress of labor in this way. So my theory was, because the other thing that I had done was there's a thing called the purple line or the red line in the crack of the bottom.
Yeah.
Right? So if you haven't heard of this, please go look it up. Purple line in labor. It's really cool. There's images on there that you can see, but it's harder to see in women of color. But for Caucasian women, it's very easy. And I had looked at it and it was more than halfway up her bottom. And her labor was matching that, but the vaginal exam wasn't.
And we see this all the time that cervical dilation isn't necessarily the best indicator of where your labor is.
Right. But my guess is they're also doing the exam so quickly, right? They're just going in and they go, yeah, 3 centimeters. But I wonder if she'd stretched it, how far it was, because it could have been actually more open. But the baby's head, because the baby was in a funky position, wasn't applying pressure. Right, to fully open it up. So it may have seemed like it was 3 centimeters, but I really think she was more like 6 or 7. Now they come and check her after I put her in the
After
flying
you do all the
cowgirl,
things.
right?
Yeah.
Which, by the way, is not an easy position when you are not medicated, right? It is difficult, but it can make a huge difference. And boy, did it make a difference. They checked her. So Now, mind you, an hour before they checked her, she was 3 centimeters. Now, an hour later, she's almost 8 centimeters. And the baby is right on the cervix. And I was like, see, this is the problem when we're checking vaginal exams like that with somebody who just doesn't understand
Who only
because they
understands
haven't been
textbook.
taught this way.
Right, right.
Right? So now my client is super frustrated and discouraged. She was with 3 centimeters.
Yeah.
When instead of like, wow, you're laboring amazing. And now they're like, holy cow, blah, blah, they're like, you're amazing. Da, da, da. And I was just like, she was amazing an hour ago. Anyways, it was just so discouraging for my client. But then, of course, now we're like, whatever. And then 45 minutes or another hour goes by and they check her again and the baby is nearly out. She can feel the pressure in her rectum and she's like, hey, hey. So first time mom, she was not 3 centimeters, y'all. She wasn't 3 centimeters. She wasn't. She was nearly fully dilated and her baby just wasn't yet into the pelvis. And the minute we got that baby in the pelvis and put the
Oh,
pressure on the cervix, the cervix was open. It was already open. If it wasn't, it wouldn't have opened that quickly like that, probably. But it wound up being, and then there's like, they bring in the NICU team because the baby's heart rate had been fast and there was a little bit of meconium and, all this stuff. And so there's like, let's see, 6 nurses and a doctor in the room.
so
Like
disturbed.
it was just like, and most of them were quiet. They were great. But then watching the doctor deliver
I
was,
hate even using that terminology, right? Like the doctor.
well, but she was.
Yeah.
She was
She was in there.
delivering. And she was like pushing my client's perineum. She was just doing so much. And you're just like, but just
Just let it happen.
because she's like, well, it was just too tight. And I'm like, well, you just gotta let it stretch. Like it's meant to stretch, like it's okay. And the baby wasn't in distress. And like, ay, ay, ay. And it was so painful to watch because it's like, I know what
What
it
it,
looks like when doctors, and I'm going to say doctors too, allow the natural physiological process to happen,
yeah.
right? When they just let it happen or when they get impatient. And that's exactly what happened here. This doc got super impatient and just started messing with her. And so she wound up tearing up. She wound
Oh,
up tearing down. She had a second-degree tear and a slight tear up near her clitoris. And, and like I watched it happen because I saw the doctor just over manipulating. And I'm just like, oh my God. And it's not to say that midwives don't do this too. It's not to say that home birth midwives don't do this too. It happens. But when you see people who have been taught to sit on their hands and wait and watch and let and here she is on her back, legs up in stirrups,
just there you go. That's why
right,
she.
which is like the worst possible position. If
I
she
just have,
didn't,
I
yeah,
have to say, like, this is why I couldn't be a doula because I couldn't. I would walk out. I'd just be like, this is absurd. Like, I know what this could be. Like, I couldn't be a doula. Like, everyone asks, like, Nicole, you're so good. Why aren't you a doula? Why aren't you doing this? One, because I have 4 young kids and the on-call life just wouldn't work. Secondly, because of that.
yeah,
Because if anyone wants to, like, birth in my home, and I will provide that space and like I will hold that space for you. I've had people like joke around after their hospital birth and say like next time I'm coming to your house for it,
right.
which is fine.
I've actually had a couple babies born at my house.
Yeah,
Yeah,
totally welcome.
client babies.
I
Besides mine, I
cannot,
mean, like a
yeah.
couple of my clients have had their babies at my house.
I could not do hospital birth because I would just be, even my sister had a hospital birth. She had a VBAC, like good experience, but like she's like, Nicole, your family, like, come on. And I'm like, no, 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 I'm gonna give you one of my best friends who's also one of the best doulas I know because she's a professional and I will be rampant.
Yeah.
So at least I
Yeah.
know that about myself and not, because I'm so passionate because I've seen what it can be, right? Like
Yeah.
again, I definitely have not seen birth as much as you have, but just personally, I've been able to have the spectrum of experiences. And, like you said too, it wasn't until I had my birth center birth that I realized how many things were not wrong, but different in the
Just different.
hospital.
Yeah.
And more or less, it hit me after he was or after I had two boys. So after they were delivered, like my hospital birth, I feel like my husband even got to hold him like before I did. And then
Mm,
with my birth center birth, I literally stood up, he came out, and they placed him on my chest as I was standing up and helped me out of the tub over to the bed, and I never let him go.
yeah.
And it was 3 hours before they were like, okay, let's weigh him, let's clean up. Like, he didn't even have a diaper on, he shit all over me. Like,
Yeah.
because it was just like pure raw skin to skin, like as they were checking him, as they were checking me, like he was still on me. And same thing with my two home births. And it's just such a polarity,
It
which is the
really is.
craziest thing.
I'm
If
sorry,
we
I'm looking down. I'm looking for that statistics for that hospital.
Yeah, no, it's totally fine, but I think that's, as much as I think, and again, this is a blanket statement, it doesn't pertain to every single person, but as much as women try to plan birth and be supported and do all of the right things, right, quote unquote, if you're just listening and not
Yeah.
watching, stepping into that hospital, you're risking all of that being washed away. Because
Yeah.
if you get the nurse that doesn't care, if you get the doctor who's at the end of her shift or his shift, if you just get, like you said, that roll of the dice that doesn't work in your favor. I did have a hospital birth that did work in my favor. I had a beautiful nurse. She was amazing. She didn't listen to the doctor when they said, "Oh, let's start on Pitocin." She like waited to put that order in and never needed it. Like she was my kind of person, right? Like I've
Yeah.
had doulas who were amazing, and luckily, like just timing wise, they were both there for the actual, birth of my baby, and there was no complications, and so fortunate for my hospital birth experience. And even so, I say this all the time, even so, not being traumatic, not being, anything that wasn't what I wanted at the time, when I had the birth center birth almost 3 years later, when I had the home births, the aha moments of like, that's why it's so different. And
It's
this is what it
so
could
different.
be.
Well, and I have and I get it's because the hospital is a system and it has to be. It's a business. It has to be run as a system. But I think there's so much lacking also in the training for nurses and doctors. And like I really wish they could see birth in all settings when they're
Yeah.
training. Because let me tell you something, every doctor that I love that I really love that I think does a brilliant job and has incredible reviews from their clients. Every single one of them worked with midwives when they were early in their career. And many of them have had the opportunity of seeing home birth. One of my favorite docs here in town, their last baby, they just decided to deliver at home because it was Christmas Day when she went into labor and their whole family was there. And she was just like, and he was like, "Do you want to go to the hospital?" She's like, "Not really." So they just went upstairs and he delivered his own baby upstairs in
Uh-huh.
in their bedroom.
Well,
Like, like
right.
I mean, he's just like, yeah, we don't have to. Like, she's
Well, and
like,
I think
everybody's here. Like, let's just have a baby.
that speaks so much volume more so than that, right? Like if the doctor is comfortable helping his wife deliver the baby at home, then inherently birth is safe at home
Yeah. Yeah.
for the right person.
Yeah.
If the doctor was like, no, home birth is not safe, even
Right.
though, I do this for a living. You need to go to the hospital, right? Like that says so much.
Yeah. And I don't want this episode to be about like home birth versus hospital birth and all
No.
of that. It really was about, for me, just, well, first of all, I don't think I'll do another birth like that. I'll probably forget and do it again when somebody asks me in a couple of years, but I really I struggle as an advocate to maintain my composure in a hospital birth when it's just like it's all the little things that would be so easy to change. It would be
I know a lot.
so easy to change them, and it would improve it for everyone. The nurses would be happier. The doctors would be happier, right? And the birth professionals would be happier. And the clients would be happier.
Right. And the outcomes
These
will
are
be better.
these are little changes. There's so many little things that like even within the system can work. And I say that because this hospital that I'm going to talk about right now knows how to do it.
Yeah, so let's get into statistics.
What's that? Okay, so I'm going to just share these statistics. So first of all, the main thing to understand is the OB that runs the department, this OB department is Denny Hartung. And everyone in that community loves him. The nurses, the doctors, the midwives, like all the doulas, they love him. And this, I guess I should probably put on my glasses because I can't read it. So it's Western Wisconsin Health.
Is this
Okay.
where Diana works? Or no?
What's that?
Is
Oh
that
yeah,
where?
Diana.
Yeah.
Diana Snyder. Yeah.
Okay.
They had 14 sets of twins. Okay, now across the country, almost all twins are now born via cesarean, no matter what.
Yeah. We had
Which
Rixa
is,
on talking
yeah, we
about.
talked about Rixa. That was this week. Please go back and understand the statistics and understand the stuff about around twins because twins are absolutely able to be born vaginally without any issue. The problem is most doctors are not trained in breech, and so therefore they just automatically. So babies born 385. So this is their 2024 statistics, right? So this is 1 year. So but here's the thing, 34 water births. You know how many hospitals can claim water births? Virtually
No?
none. Most of them don't even have tubs, but this place had 34. 92% of their babies received skin to skin contact in the first hour of life. 92%. That means the majority, and only a very small percentage probably had some sort of respiratory,
NICU
something they
issue.
needed
Yeah.
help with, right? Which is, I mean, the statistics, what I wish is I had statistics for other hospitals compare it to show you just the dramatic difference. But here's the big one. Here's 86% breastfeeding. 86%. Most are under 50%. Most hospitals are under 50%. Here's a big one. Vaginal breech births. They had 15 of them. Most hospitals have zero,
Zero.
zero. They won't even talk about it. They won't even allow it. This hospital had 15. But here's the two biggest ones. And this one is the VBAC rate. The VBAC rate, which is vaginal birth after cesarean, their success rate was 91%. 91% of the families that attempted vaginal birth after cesarean were successful.
Amazing.
Most hospitals have less than 10%.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's like 9%.
Yeah, 9% is the average. 1%. The research shows us that at least 70% will be successful when they attempt it. This hospital said, hold my beer.
Right.
Percent. But this is my very favorite statistic from this hospital. The national average for cesarean is around 30 to 37%, meaning 35 to 37% of the people that walk into the hospital, 1/3 that walk into this hospital will have a cesarean.
So
Now,
safe. What are these?
some hospitals have upwards of
Like
50,
60%.
60% C-section rates. So again, this is where we have this conversation that where you give birth matters. You
And if you're
need to
listening,
know.
check your cesarean hospital
Check
statistics.
your hospital cesarean rate. This hospital, are you ready for this?
Can't wait. 0%. That's amazing.
They had a 5% C-section rate.
Probably because the true emergencies, not the intervention-led unplanned emergencies, right? Like that's the true emergency rate.
5% C-section rate.
That's amazing.
It's amazing. And it's, yeah, and I mean, the World Health
It's
Organization,
possible, right? They're doing it.
is. That's my
It's possible.
point.
It's
That's
possible.
my point.
We could change it. We could do it right.
Nearly 400 births. This isn't a small birth center.
Right.
That's a lot.
It's
And
almost,
they're not just, and a lot of people say, oh, well, it must be, they're only taking low risk. No, they're taking everyone. They take everyone. So there's a lot of places that will say, oh, well, we have the high risk patients. We have the low income patients. We have the, guess what?
so do they.
So do they. They are serving the entire community.
Amazing.
And this is what drives me. Literally, this is what drives me, is the fact that this is possible. And the bullshit that we're doing to families every day. I am not anti-doctor. I am not anti-hospital. I am not anti-nurse. I am pro-better. And one of my favorite quotes, and I've probably said it already once before, is my favorite quote was by Amanda Hardy. She was on my board at Improving Birth. And she said, when I'm critical of the education system, it does not mean I hate teachers.
Right.
When I am critical and I say I hate war, it does not mean I don't appreciate soldiers or that I hate soldiers. When I am critical of the maternity care system, it does not mean I don't respect doctors and nurses. Because without criticism, there is no improvement. And that is what I'm critical of. I am critical of this one-size-fits-all system that is not serving anyone. It's not serving the nurses, it's not serving the doctors, and it's certainly not serving the patients. Who it's serving is the bean counters who are running a business, which I get. But guess what? If your hospital starts pulling out statistics like this, you're going to have more business.
They won't go home. They won't go home birth. They'll just go to you.
You're worried about all these people going to home birth. Do this. Get your shit together. Go ask Denny Harhung what he's doing in his department. What's he doing? And we could talk to Amber Price, who is the CEO of, where is she at? Which hospital is she at? She's in Virginia. Can't think of her hospital. But again, she's somebody else who is really doing it well. And like, it's freaking possible. It's possible.
It's possible.
And I want, as a pregnant person, this is why you need an advocate, right? This is why you need an advocate. Like, I could tell you something else that happened.
Williamsburg Regional Medical Center.
I just want to say this part about the birth or after the baby is born. So I had shared with the family about the research, the research that says do not put a hat on your baby in that first hour. Like, you want to have that bonding, right? And so they said, oh no, we don't want the hat. And the nurse is like putting the hat on and they take the hat off. The parents take the hat off. And she's like, where did the hat go? And dad goes, we don't want a hat. They're like, no, you have to have a hat. And it's like everyone in the room is now telling her she's got to have a hat. Like, oh no, it's really, the baby loses a lot of heat and we got to maintain the heat and da 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 da. And like, there's research that says we don't need that actually, and that it's actually detrimental to the
To the
bonding
biome.
process.
Yeah.
Right. And the microbiome and all these things. And it was so uncomfortable. It was so uncomfortable. They had zero respect for my client's decision making. Zero.
Yeah.
And they went in and
I'd be like, once the baby is out, like, get away from my baby.
yeah,
Mother
no,
bear
I totally
comes
get that.
out. Mother
But
bear comes out.
it was just another situation where like the
Right.
parents are like, no, we don't want a hat on. And they were like, oh no, you have to. Like, no, no, they just told you they don't want a hat on. This is their baby. I don't care what your policy is. I don't care what you do every day. This person is saying, this is how we plan to do this. But I think we all just step back and we're just like, it's just not worth the argument in this moment. We're ruining their birth moment because they're having to argue with you.
Yeah. Ugh.
And it just infuriates me. And anyways, so I won't be going back to a birth anytime soon in a hospital unless it's at my favorite hospital with my favorite doctor who I know is respectful and is kind to people's desires and stuff. So anyways,
Yeah. Until next time.
yeah, get me all fired up. All fired up.
All fired up. All right. Well, thank you guys for listening. If you have any questions, if you're like, oh man, I need to rethink this, like reach out. We would love to connect you with
Yeah.
people in your area, no matter where you are in the country. We know people between Dawn and myself. We can connect you with some really
And
amazing
also just ask the doulas in
support.
your community. They know where the best hospital is. They know who the best doctors are. Use them as a resource because they know. Yeah, for sure. Well, thanks so much. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.